And we are now live.
Okay, so I'm going to call the meeting to order at 3:05 p.m. Thank you very much, everybody, for showing up. And number 3, the approval of the agenda is circulated. Be it resolved that the agenda for the November 9th, 2022 meeting of the Grafton Communal Water System Committee be approved as circulated. Could I have a mover, please? John? A seconder? Grit? And all in favor? Passed. Okay. Number 4, approval of the minutes. It resolved that the minutes of the September 21st, 2022 Grafton Communal Water Committee meeting be approved. Can I have a mover, please? John. Seconder. Mike. All in favor? Passed. Okay. Any business arising from the previous minutes? Anybody got any questions, concerns? John, go ahead.
I guess it's more for Grant than anything else, but his report kind of indicated to me that the RFP would be distributed to council committee members. And I don't know if they got it, but I didn't get one. And also that I would like to ask him about the project schedule, because the way I understood from the meeting, he expects to have the bids out and back probably by now or very soon, because he's also planning to have an on-site visit with the bidders before the end of the year.
Pat, you had your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Chair Booth. The RFP has not gone out, and it's due to partially the municipal election, and now we're into the council.
We can't hear you, Pat.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's just muffled. We can. Now we can't hear you at all.
Sorry. So the RFP has not gone out. And the reason being is because we were tied up with elections and then the council training. So it's our intention to get it out next week. So the schedule will have to be based on when we are able to get it out and based on Grant and the rest of the team's availability.
And we got 5% of that. Nobody can hear you up here. Maybe try your headphones, Pat.
I can jump in and help out, Pat. Just due to the elections and everything, the RFP has not been out. The plan that Pat and I were talking about is next week. So those dates are going to have to, we'll change the dates according to when it's out and Grant gets it and blah, blah, blah. So we anticipate next week that it'll be done.
Okay, John.
Okay, thank you.
Any other business arising from the previous minutes? Seeing nobody's hand, nobody here. Okay, all in favor? We did have a seconder and a mover for that, right? Mike? Yeah. You have to remind me. Okay, number 6, financial reports, budget to actual. Be it resolved that the budget to actuals to September 30th, 2022 be received and filed. Can I have a mover, please? Mover. John Logo, seconder. Mike? Any questions about the budget to actual? Nicole is down in the sunny south somewhere in Dominican or whatever. So we can ask the questions if you have any concerns, and we can give it to Yolanda and Pat and Troy, and they can get her to answer them. Any questions about the budget to actual, anybody?
Just on the capital, just on the list, capital is listed under fund number 20, but there's no capital shows up in that portion, and yet in the expense items below, there are a total of 8 items, 5 of which indicate that there should be capital, and the other 3 I'm assuming are general expense and not part of the capital. but there doesn't seem to be much charges going against the capital. I know that's probably not fair to ask people when she's not here, but
I can answer, John, it's Larry. I can answer it. I did, I went through the sheets that we do send Grafton there for our costs, and I did on a line item each item. And she said that she would have it adjusted at the end of the October budget. Because I did put on there that what were the capital projects like for the dehumidifier and that, and I did tell her that there was no capital for the header, which happens to be the most expensive part of the overage between the study and the actual work done to replace the header at the water treatment plant.
yeah, I think you're right. I think it just needs cleaned up a little bit so we have a better understanding of whether we're spending the capital or what we're spending our money on.
Yeah, but I did go through it, and I did go through it by line item, and I did allocate it to the codes in the budget, so that she said that she would adjust it all, but the end of October 1.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the financial report? Being none, all in favor? Passed. Number 7, projects, current updates, construction/other. Be it resolved that the technical memorandum from Bruce Highcamp Geocamp Limited dated October 31st, 2022 re the Grafton monitoring wells and the BTEX detection update regarding September 2022 sampling be received and filed, and further that the memorandum be forwarded to the Council of the Township of A&H. Can I have a mover, please? Grit Cole, seconder. John Orbeck. And is there any, go ahead, Bruce.
Okay.
You're up.
I've attached the report, the technical memorandum. It's 1 page, and then I think there's 17 pages of lab report. So there's not much there. It's just a quick update. We've been collecting quarterly samples at the Grafton monitoring wells that are located between the landfill and the production wells. And as everybody's aware, about 2 years ago, we had a BTEX detection, very low concentrations, but still the detection. And we've increased for this year monitoring from annual to quarterly. The last sample was in September. We had 2 non-detects in March and June. And in September, we had a minor detection again. So a little bit of a setback. I was hoping that we weren't going to get any detection. But that said, it's still very, very low. I think the next sampling event in December, if we get very, very low concentrations or non-detect, one way or another, I'm going to ask the Ministry of the Environment to reduce the program to annually, because I think we have a handle on it and the concentrations are pretty low. But we had a little detection. I think that's about it. Does anybody else have any questions?
Go ahead, Grit.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Bruce, I went through those charts,
Yeah.
and you know, I've kind of been watching this since 2019 and wondering why the toluene became such an issue. When I go through those charts, all I see highlighted in red is things to do with iron and pH. Toluene was never, ever highlighted in red. And as you say, it's low levels. So, well, I understand that toluene is carcinogenic. So are so many of the other things on the list. So I'm wondering why the Ministry of the Environment would lean on us to have to do this kind of testing, because it is expensive. I'm all for having safe water. I'm on the system. So I'm just wondering.
Okay, well, good question. So those monitoring wells are situated where they are because of concerns of the wells capturing landfill leachate. There was a number of set trigger points. I think it was sodium, road salt, let's say. And then there was BTEC, so benzene, toluene, ethylbenzene, xylene. And the triggers that was set, and these are triggers that are in the permit to take water. If it's just a detection, it's not even like a concentration, it's just a detection. So the lab can detect a certain level, method detection limit, they call it. Well, we've been coasting along all these years with less than method detection limits. And then in, I think it was 2019 or 2020, we had a detection, and it's been consistent. It's low, but it's been consistent. So getting back to your question, it's part of the permit to take water. If we have a detection, we have to send regular updates to the ministry, do an interpretive report. That was all done, and now we're just kind of in a holding pattern. I'm hoping to put it back to normal after the end of this year. We were going every 2 weeks when we initially detected it. Then we managed to reduce it down to quarterly, and I think we can put it to rest at the end of this year.
Oh, go ahead, Grit.
Just as a follow-up to that then, based on the fact that the water system here in Grafton had to be put in due to contamination of local wells back in the mid 1990s, I guess it went into effect in 1999, according to the report. And it is the county road that caused the contamination of the wells. And I guess they expanded the system to include all of Grafton to make it viable, financially viable, is what I'm assuming, because we cannot have huge development here anyways, just by the nature of our rural township. So based on the fact that we have a water system that had to be set up because of contaminated wells due to salting, et cetera, and this possible toluene, even though we've not been able to determine where it's coming from, given that it's in place, these monitoring wells are in place for the leachate possibility from the old landfill. I know we approached the county in the past asking for some compensation, but given that we are a very small water system, I still think it would be worth pursuing that going forward, because we are in this position not of our own doing. Thank you.
I can't really comment on the compensation part of it, but the county has been cooperative, and they've sampled the monitoring wells at all of them that they sample at the landfill, and BTECs came back non-detect in all their locations. So we can't really point the finger that it's the landfill. We even tried looking at whether it was organic, buried peat, and that was kind of inconclusive, that study. So we really don't know the source. So I don't think we can point the finger and or ask the county for compensation.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Bruce from anybody? Seeing none. Okay, all in favor of the report? Passed, carried. And that report will go to the new council. And next is, be it resolved that the correspondence from Larry Spirica, Lucy Ree, Grafton Drinking Water System 2022 Operations Report, reporting period from September to October 2022 be received and filed, and further that the report be forwarded to the council of the township of Alnwick-Haldimand. Can I have a mover, please? Grit Cole, seconder. John Logo. Go ahead, Larry, you're up.
Good afternoon, everybody. On the bottom of the first page here, I had typed in reservoir ROV inspection twice. The second one should read vibration analysis. Sorry for that error. But anyways, with the report there, if you look at September and October, interesting. There's only a difference of 2 cubic meters average per day. So in September, we had 216, and in October, we had 218. So the plant does run consistently. And then the high numbers is usually because the volume of water being taken either through a mutual aid or when bulk station. The asphalt is complete at the truck fill station. It was shut down a couple weekends ago, or we did it on a Friday. We shut down not last week and the weekend before to let it harden. So everything is working well. We had the annual generator service completed. We did do the ROV of the high lift well on October 5th. There we had General diving in doing some work for us at the Coburg water treatment plant. So we just tied it all together as one project to save cost on mobilization and demob. Then again, the vibration analysis, this is something we do every 3 years on all the pumps in both places. So this was another one where we brought it together with the Grafton and the Coburg one to cut costs down. There was one pump, the fire pump, that needed to be readjusted a little bit. So they came back and completed that on the 28th of October. Hydrant and flushing and valve exercise, everything's been completed. All the hydrants have been winterized, so they're shut down for the season. We had no service repairs during the reporting time. St. Mary's Cemetery, talking with Tom Bain yesterday, he said that service should be complete on the week of December the 5th. They're trying to wrap up a bunch of projects between Port Hope, Coburg, and that there. So he's saying the first week in December that'll be resolved. Compliance, we all had an inspection by the ministry on September 1st. They forwarded us the final report on October 6th, which I have included in your package. And we did not get 100%. So we got nailed on a couple things, and it was to do with disinfection of equipment that we were using in like when we were fixing a water main break or service line. They asked, well, was it chlorinated? Yes, we did, but there wasn't a little box on our sheet that says check it off. And that's where they said, well, prove to us that you did it, even though you're saying you did it, prove to us that it was done. And the only way we could do that is on the form that we have. It has a bunch of things that we got to do, and there was supposed to be a checkbox, and there wasn't. So we added that, we corrected that. And then another one was, it didn't say who the OIC was, the operator in charge. So we added that box to the form. So we've taken all the steps to that, and that's what caused us to lose roughly 3.5 points from 100. The rest of it is, a lot of it is housekeeping, and we've done those things for them. One of the ones was on the CT time calculation. The number should have been 2.0. Our form had 0.2. So we rectified that, and that form we use every day for CT calculation at the water plant. What else did they? Best management practices. They talk again about the backflow prevention thing there, and that, of course, we keep telling them that's with the county, and I'm not sure where they are with that. They're trying to roll it out. The other thing is that we do backflow inspections by a third party every year in all the backflows that we use in our system or at the water treatment plant. We bring in a third party for that. They also asked about having either a bylaw or something to say who can operate the fire hydrants there, and it does say in the bylaw that it's Lucy personnel or persons designated by the Grafton Fire Department. And like I said, all of them that we have addressed. to make sure that that's there. Infrastructure one, we created a policy through the WQMS because the WQMS controls a lot of things of what we do to make sure that we are always overlooking everything and going through that. So we drafted a new policy and brought it into the process. So it says that infrastructure will be inspected as per our schedule that we were doing, like certain analysis every 3 years, doing the wells, checking them and videotaping them and all that every 5 years. So we've done that. So the ministry's happy with that. And is there any questions about inspection?
John, you had your hand
Yeah.
first, and then Grit, I'll go to you. Go ahead, John. Oh, John Logo, sorry. I'm gonna call John, I'll call you JR as usual, and then that way we won't get mixed up in JL. So JL, go ahead. Oh, didn't you? I thought you said ask a question at the end.
I thought he was wanting to talk about the inspection. I do.
Okay, go ahead. Turn your mic on.
My first question, Larry, is regarding the total discharge,
Yes.
which was on your first page.
Yes.
Does that include flushing?
Yes.
It does include flushing. How often do we flush?
Twice a year. Well, we'll
Twice a
do it like we do it in the spring, and then
Yeah.
in the fall, we just do a minor flush. And all that's doing is just removing any water that has been really sitting between the main and the hydrant lead. And we just move a little bit of water down the main. But in the spring, we do a good flush to make sure that we take, if there's any, like when you get further down the end of the system where there's fewer houses, sometimes the water sits there for a little longer. We want to remove that to make it velocity, to make sure that we're cleaning the water mains.
Okay. Do you have any idea about how much water would go through there when you're doing that hydrant flush?
We do have an app that we put into our GIS so that we tell how long the hydrant's been flushing, and we can calculate that out if need be.
Okay, so it would go up 5% or something like that for the month, just out of curiosity.
Probably 5, maybe 7%.
Okay.
Yeah.
So nothing drastic, and it's only happening
No.
twice a year.
And it only happens twice a year. And during the summer, that when you see the higher flows, it's mostly due to the truck fills.
Okay. I do have another one then.
Go ahead.
Just as a comment and maybe a thought for future, when you do your compliance report, and particularly the Grafton drinking water systems, when I was reading it, I was reading all of the, you took the literature right out of the report.
Yeah.
And then at the bottom, I got a little bit confused whether that was your recommendation, their recommendation, or whose recommendation. So I'm wondering if you can't put that in a different colors or highlight it or some way so we can tell that this is your recommendation.
Sure. No, we can do it. We'll change the font and everything else to make it stand out.
Okay. Backflow preventers. Are we actually testing the people's homes, or is that what you're suggesting that the county is going to do?
No, the backflow preventers usually is for the ICI stuff, and anywhere where like we have, I think 3 or 4 in the water treatment plant. One goes to the truck fill station, one goes to a piece of equipment that we're using, and that there. So that's the ones we check. But the county or the ministry is saying that there should be ones for industrial, commercial, and institutional. And that's the one where the county is trying to do that. Kirk Johnson is working on that, trying to get a county-wide bylaw and program in place for backflow preventers where they can actually administrate it, oversee it, and then because there's a charge for and they have to be done every year. They have to be certified every year.
Okay.
So that's not the little ones that were in the house. No.
And is there a law for the house?
No.
There is no law for the house. Okay.
No.
2 more quick comments, if I could,
Sure.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
You were mentioning the hydrant policy.
Yes.
I don't know if everybody was aware of that. You wouldn't be, but there was a time 3 or 4 years ago when it would appear that one of the hydrants up near the 401 was opened by a farmer, I believe it was.
Yes,
Was it?
yes.
And so as long as we have a bylaw in there saying they can't do that anymore, I guess we'll just have to make sure that we follow that bylaw, but.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing is if somebody opens the hydrant and they flow it for more than 15 seconds, then it sets off the alarm at the water plant.
Okay,
And we can trend that, and we've done that. And one, when you're talking up by the 401, we did find a setup that they had. And we did take one length of hose, which is 50 feet of hose, and they're fitting and all that. And the person has never asked for it back.
okay.
So, and there are times that we will get a flow thing there, and then we know it's not, because the fire department calls all the time when they need to use either for training or for mutual aid. So,
Okay.
but there's a couple of times we do get an alarm, and we know that somebody has hooked up to a hydrant somewhere, but we don't know where. That does happen.
And I guess my final question, Larry, it
Yeah.
mentioned in there about informing the public on ways to reduce our water consumption.
Yeah, I want to work together with Yolanda and Troy and all that, and we'll see if we can come up with a newsletter. We'll use our people here at Lucy and all that for getting out some type of newsletter that we can put out there to say this is how we can conserve water.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Larry.
No problem.
Okay, Grit, go ahead.
Through you, Chair Booth, to Larry. On the very first page as well, the
Yes.
percent of waste water treatment, average rated capacity,
Yes.
September and October, roughly 17%.
Yeah.
Of what we're permitted to take, which I believe is around 1,200. Is that correct?
Around there, yes.
Okay. So over the year, on an annual basis, we typically don't go above 20%, or there may be some times of the year that it's a little more, but it kind of averages out to roughly 20% of the capacity of what we're rated to.
Well, yeah, it's always less than 25. The odd time I've seen it close to 28 or 30, but that's been a couple of years ago when it was really hot. They were using a lot of water, or they were selling a lot of water through the bulk station.
But it averages out to less than 25% annually. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? John, go ahead.
I just
JR.
have one, and I'm just not sure. The WTP, is that water treatment plant or water treatment permit?
No, water treatment plant. Yeah,
Okay, so
but if it's a water permit, it would be the permit to take water. So it'll be PTTW.
thank you.
Any other questions? Bruce, go ahead.
Bruce.
Yeah, I just had a comment for Larry. You sent me an email and I meant to respond to that during my discussion, but then you started talking, it reminded me. You asked if we have to collect additional samples, and I would say that we implemented, I guess, every December you were collecting.
Yeah, we're going to collect the ones in December. Yeah.
The raw water, and I think it'd be prudent to do the VOCs again too.
The VOC is the same as what we did last. That's what I have on the board. The first week in December that we'll get all those samples done.
Yeah, I would include VOCs then.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. That's it.
Yeah, thanks, Bruce.
Any other questions for Larry? Anybody? Being none, all in favor of the report? Passed. Okay, we're going to welcome Jennifer Current, the senior planner. Be it resolved that the Grafton Communal Water Committee concur with the recommendations in the report by the senior planner that the Township of A&H return SEMA Plus to conduct water modeling for the Grafton Municipal Water Supply, and further that the cost be funded by the Water Service Development Charge Reserve Fund, and further that the senior planner's report be received and filed. Could I have a mover to bring it on the floor? Grit, seconded by Mike. And just so you know, just to give an update before we discuss this, it was discussed at the last water meeting. We had discussed with Larry about the water modeling and how much it was going to cost. And I think Larry went into it a little bit of how Coburg does it. And then there was a report that came up to council from Jennifer Current to council, and council thought it was in the best interest to refer it back to the water committee to let us have the discussion on it. And then whatever we decide, we can send our recommendation back to council. So any questions? Grit, you want a question? Or sorry, I mean, Jennifer. Jennifer, go ahead. You can present. It's your report, Jennifer. Sorry.
Okay, through you, Chair Booth. This is a report that was taken to council in, I believe it was September, with respect to a request that the township retain SEMA Plus to conduct water modeling for the Grafton Municipal Supply. Right now, we have one subdivision application that has received draft approval, and they're going through the final approval stage. I've got another draft plan of subdivision application. I am anticipating the receipt of 2 more draft plan of subdivision applications, and all within the Grafton settlement area, within the Grafton Water Supply Service area. In order to ensure that we have our system can accommodate those developments, I've made several phone calls to Larry, and he's tried to explain the water system to me, and I keep saying, but does our system have capacity? And and the answer is always a qualified, well, maybe, or probably, but we don't really know. So in order for us to get a good picture of where our water system stands in terms of the ability to service properties within the settlement area, we can have a water modeling study prepared that will ensure that when I get these applications, I can say, yes, we do have the capacity to service you, or no, we don't. It's kind of a critical piece in the development process when you've got a municipal system, that the municipality have a good handle on what our servicing opportunities are, if there's any limitations, if there's an area that can't be serviced due to, I don't know, I'm not an engineer, but sometimes there's pipe sizes and all of that, various things that need to be taken in, pressure, and that needs to be taken into consideration. And I want to make sure that any developments that we approve or give draft plan approval to can be serviced within the existing system. Or alternatively, if there are improvements that need to be made to the system in order to service that development, that those increases or those improvements to the system are made at the cost of the developer. But in order to do that, we need to know where our baseline is now. And that's the purpose of this water modeling study. And I've spoken with Larry, and they had, Coburg had SEMA Plus prepare their water modeling. And I believe that they are happy with that. Now, the water model would have to be updated as developments come on stream. And as one of the conditions of draft plan approval, it would be the requirement, or in submission of an application for draft plan approval, that the applicants would have to prepare water modeling for that development. And that water modeling can then be incorporated into the municipal model to update it as the developments progress. So if I have said anything incorrect, Larry can correct me here, but I think that is the nutshell. Basically, the municipality needs to get a firm grasp on whether or not we have the capacity within both the actual water supply and the pipes in the ground to service the developments that are coming forward.
Okay, so before we take questions from anybody, did you want to comment on that, Larry, or you're
No, no, I'm good with it, with it, and like it says, it gives council and the water committee an idea of what's available to developers and which way, in which direction they want to go in. And that, so it's a useful tool. We use it for all our major developments here in town. Every time a developer wants to put in 250 homes, they put the pipe sizes in and all that, and then we put it through the model and say, yeah, yay, you can do it, or nay, or the pipe size has to be upsized. So it just helps everybody else, and then you know what the developer is paying for.
Okay. Just before I go to Grit, Cole, Grit's handed us a sheet here, which I guess you guys wouldn't be able to see, but she's asked for it to be added to the minutes. So we've given a copy to Yolanda and she'll put it in the minutes. So go ahead, Grit.
Okay, yes, that's because I didn't have time to finish it. I literally finished it before I came today. And I will be emailing it, so you have an electronic copy, and I will email it to all members of the committee and everyone.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
good. Thank you.
Before I want to read it because then it goes much faster, but I do want to open with something I have under my summary. Grafton is a small rural residential hamlet with only a small communal well system servicing approximately 330 dwellings and 40 bulk users. Approximate. Compare that to the 100% urban town of Coburg with municipal water and sewer systems servicing approximately 9,520 dwellings. And who knows, industry. So it's a totally different ball game. Than we're not a great big huge municipality, and I don't think we should be looking at our little tiny water system under the microscope of a large municipality. Anyways, here I go. Read the water modeling study, $30,000 to $50,000, Grafton water supply. I oppose the recommendation to fund the proposed water modeling study from the Water Service Development Charge Reserve Fund, DCRF. The current amount in the fund is $349,128. Those funds have built up over time and represent development charges paid by purchasers, users of existing home builds. 100% of the DCRF is to be applied to capital replacement costs to the existing system infrastructure for existing users of the system and should not be used for growth. I refer to the January 2021 water rate study prepared by Infrastructure Solutions, Inc., where it states on the bottom of page 10, 4.1, development charges. Such charges are applied to developers and others connecting new non-serviced areas or building lots to the existing water systems. The growth-related costs of building additions to the system are passed on to these developers or new customers. Existing users are thus spared the capital cost of expanding infrastructure to accommodate new users to the system. We have an urgent need for a new well. The Grafton Communal water system has only had one production well, number 2, in use for over a decade due to contamination of production well number 1. Construction of the new well is scheduled to begin in spring of 2023. The cost of the new well is projected to be $1,719,000. It'll go up. When the 2021 water rate study was approved, the total cost of financing the new well was built into the water rates from 2021 to 2069, as the township was unable to secure provincial federal funding for the project. It is unclear why the Development Charges Reserve Fund was not applied to the capital replacement cost of the production well number 1, but it can and should be used to reduce costs to the existing users. Furthermore, the current users are now paying for a debenture that will not be required due to the ISIP funding grant granted to the Grafton Communal Water System in the amount of $1,260,542. I'll leave off the 70 cents. Leaving $458,457 to be funded through water reserves and water rates. In reality, if the Development Charges Reserve Fund in the amount of $349,128 were to be used for the capital cost of the well, then only $109,329 would need to be funded. Given that the Grafton water reserves at the end of December 31st, 2021 stood at $596,722, it seems reasonable that the remaining amount of $109,329 could be funded from there. User water rate studies are typically reviewed every 5 years, so the next review would be 2026. This means the Grafton users on the water system who are already paying for costs that will and can be covered will continue to pay the portion of increases to water rates that were built into the 2020 water rates for a new well. The new well now has ISIP funding, and the development charges reserve fund should be used for the new well, as that is the express purpose of collecting development charges. Also note that the well is having to be replaced prematurely, really. So yeah, we should use it for that. The rationale behind the Grafton users to foot the bill for the water modeling study is because no water modeling has been conducted to determine how the system is operating. Given that the demands on the Grafton communal water system rarely goes above 20% of the capacity that the system is permitted to operate under, how can it be justified that a water modeling study is required? It's been operating since the end of 1990, at the end of the 1990s to now, and we haven't required any determination of how well the system is operating, because it's operating well for the users that it was built for. The real reason is because of the potential for proposed subdivision developments in the hamlet of Grafton. When I was campaigning, I heard so many say they do not want development in the hamlet of Grafton. And I recall saying on several occasions, unfortunately, that's where development can take place. But it should not be the existing users that are paying for the costs of that development. So I'm here on my behalf as a user, water user, and also for those that are on the Grafton water system, and will be paying for this water study out of our development charges. At the last committee meeting, I shared that it had been suggested to potential developers that perhaps it would benefit them if they shared water modeling study costs. That still seems to be the best approach, since a water study will be required at the time of any draft application of subdivision. They still have to prove that they can use our water system. So paying twice to me doesn't seem to make any sense. In summary, number one, Grafton water users should not pay for a water modeling study that is required for the express purpose of future development. Number two, Grafton is a small rural residential hamlet with only a small communal well system servicing approximately 330 dwellings and 40 bulk users. Compare that to the 100% urban town of Coburg with municipal water and sewer systems servicing approximately 9,520 dwellings. I re-emphasize that because they have a lot larger reserve to draw on than we do in our little hamlet. To expect the existing users, residents and taxpayers in the hamlet, who are residents and taxpayers in the hamlet of Grafton, to absorb the costs of a water modeling study for future development on the basis that the costs will be recouped as future development occurs is unfair. Future development will be slower than anticipated due to a recession, downturn in the real estate market, high cost of construction materials, and trades already in short supply. It'll be years before any return. I say more than a decade before any return on that investment would come back to any of the current users. I respectfully request that the Grafton Communal Water Committee not approve the use of the Development Charges Reserve Fund for the proposed water modeling study, as those funds belong to the existing users of the GCW system and should be used for capital needs. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions? Any comments? John, JL?
I'll comment. First of all, what Grit says is there's a lot of good information in there and probably a lot of truths. I'm not convinced that we need to do a study, because if we're only using 20% of the water capabilities, then we're going to add another 100 houses or whatever that may be, 200 houses. I'm not exactly sure, but it's not more than doubling it up. So I agree with that portion of it. And another thing I'd like to point out, so just so Grit maybe has a little bit, maybe everybody else needs to hear that too, is my understanding of the water system that went in 1991 or about there, and it was over $10 million to put it in. My understanding of to replace the distribution of what we have now would be about $10 million. How much? $18 million for, yeah. So that to take that money out of, I think we have to pay for anything in there. We're going to take away from the people in the long run, because at the rate it's going up, and I believe it had to go up about, the study was done in 2016, I think it was. They were saying Grafton had to expand at about 5 houses per year continuously, so that by 2070 we would have enough money to pay for all of that. Now it's a long way away, but
What study is that?
that was the water study done by Infrastructure Solutions.
Well, we have a new infrastructure. We have a new infrastructure solutions water study that was done in January 2021, and that's what I've quoted right from.
And I could be wrong, but I don't think that went out to 270. I think that was limited to 2030 or 35, but
It went to 2069 in their
did it go
rates.
to 2069?
Yeah, yeah. Yolanda's nodding yes. Thank you, Yolanda.
Okay. And how much was it for? $18 million?
No, the infrastructure, that would be to replace our entire system. I believe it's, and maybe you guys can even recall, because I'm quoting this out of my head just from picturing the study, but I believe to replace the entire system, wastewater treatment plant, and the approximately 15 kilometers of piping and whatever else would be around 18 million. Does that ring a bell with anyone else?
And I guess the only thing I would say to that, my understanding of when they put the pipes in, they didn't use the best quality pipes, and they're supposed to last 50 years.
Okay, and I hear exactly what you're saying, John, but that's not what our water rates are based on. Our water rates are based on replacing our new well, not based on what you're saying. So my other recommendation that I would have would be that we review and do an internal review of the current water rate study, and adjust how that's being applied. Because to say we're paying for our new well, when we now have funding and we actually have development charges in place that covers capital costs, such as a well replacement, why are we not using it? We're borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. So we're still being paid, we're still paying excess as current users for something in the future that any new users coming on should also be paying for. So why are we going to pay for 10 years now as users for a well that we know has to go in and is now being almost at least 80% funded, I'm thinking. Why can't we look at that? I'm not saying to necessarily reduce our rates, because we know that we're going to have to replace some infrastructure, but let's call it by the right name. Let's not tell people they're paying for a new well when in fact they really are not.
I guess I'd have to hear something from our treasurer to respond to that. I'm not saying you're wrong, I just don't know for sure, but I do know that there was no plans to put a new well in there 10 years ago, and all of the costs that Infrastructure Solutions were doing were prepared strictly for replacement of the equipment up at the north of the 401 to get the water out of the ground and pump it. And the other portion of that was for the distribution of the water throughout the hamlet.
So are you still on the 2016 study? Because we have a 2021 study that's been approved.
Okay.
That's what I'm going on.
Okay.
Current facts and figures that are in place.
Yeah,
Thank
and I
you.
guess I just like to make sure that that included replacement of the lines. Because that will be that will be very expensive.
Any other questions from anybody? I guess clarification for myself is needed and I'm not sure who it comes from, whether it's from the treasurer or whatever, about the development charges. I know, Grit, you have it written here and it makes sense there. So I want to make sure, because it says development charges. Such charges are applied to the developers and others connecting new non-serviced areas or building lots to the existing water systems. The growth-related costs of building additions to the system are passed on to these developers or new customers. Existing users are thus spared the capital cost of expanding infrastructure to accommodate new users to the system. So that would tell me, that would say that we shouldn't be using that money for the water modeling.
That
And
would be my
it makes sense
interpretation.
what you're saying, Grit, is that if we have almost $350,000 sitting in the DCRF fund, some of that money or all of it, or I guess depending on how we decide, could be put towards the 400 and, is it 400 and something?
Yeah.
What is it we'd be paying? 458,000. So like you said, that could be a much lower number for the water users, right? Towards the well, if they took some of that money or all of it or whatever.
Correct.
So I'm not quite sure. Jennifer, you have a question, concern, comment?
I guess it's more of a comment. The development charges are collected, yes, for lots that are being dwelling is being constructed on within the settlement area of Grafton and will be serviced by the municipal water supply. The development charges are collected for growth-related capital costs. That's true, and the studies required for those growth-related capital costs. When the development charge is collected by the municipality for a property, that does not mean that that then goes into a fund for that specific property or for the existing residents to use specifically for upgrades that will benefit them. It's for the municipality to use for the benefit of the entire settlement area, not just the existing residents, to cover growth-related capital costs and the associated studies. So it's not just to say that a development charge that was collected for the Glens of Antrim, those development charges are collected for the benefit of the residents of the Glens of Antrims and their it's for the entire community, and it's calculated on an area basis. So I don't think that it's an inappropriate use of the development charges for, and I've confirmed this with the treasurer and our development charges consultant, that those charges that can be used for this type of study. And that's just, it's not only intended for pipes. It's also, in the case of infrastructure, the capital costs, yes, and the studies required. Right now, we're in a situation where we receive an application for draft plan approval for a potential 70-lot subdivision in Grafton, which isn't out of the realm of possibility right now. And when they submit their application, they submit a servicing plan or a servicing proposal, and they basically say, trust us, it will work. And the municipality doesn't have anything to say, any way to back up and confirm that, yes, their trust us, it will work, is to will work, or is to the best way of servicing it within the community. So the water modeling, it's not an unnecessary piece of the puzzle when considering development within a serviced area. It is an important piece of information required. And when comparing Grafton's water modeling to the municipal or town of Coburg, their water modeling, I'm sure, probably costs more than $30,000 to $50,000. This is kind of something that needs to be done because the municipality has a municipal water system, and we have a designated growth area that will be using that water system. That's just my piece of input into this whole puzzle. I just want to try to protect the municipality so that when we have development applications that are received within our service area, that we're not just going on the information provided by the applicants, because yes, they are prepared by qualified professional engineers, but it's always to the advantage of the developer. They're not looking out for the municipality's best interests. We as a municipality need to look after the entire settlement area, the best interest of the municipality. And it could be that a developer comes in and, okay, I'm not good with water pipe sizes, so I'm just going to use random numbers. And a developer says that we're going to put in a 10 pipe, and the 10 pipe will service that development. But really what should be going on is a 15 pipe should be going in there, because it will allow for future connection to this or that. And this is the type of so excuse me, all of the real technical people, because I apologize for my use of random numbers. I'm not up on the pipe sizes required for water. I think those are really, really big, what I said. But anyways, that's the sort of information that we need. We need a baseline to go with. So that's just my input, and that's where this came from, because every time I get an application, I'm calling Larry at Lucy saying, do we have the water? And I know we have the water, but are the pipes in the ground sufficient to deliver the water that we need? Is the water pressure going to be sufficient for fire protection purposes? All of those types of things. And also, Larry was explaining this to me, and I will probably get it wrong, but because our system, it's a pressure system like all water systems are, there are areas where there are pressure relief valves, I think they're called. And when you take a connection above the pressure release valve, or just below the pressure release valve, I'm not sure which one it is, it affects how the pressure of the water going into a development off of that line. So if we have this information through a water modeling study, it will help us in our evaluation of these proposals. So that's just my pitch.
Okay, thank you. Grit, you have your hand up?
Okay, that whole water pressure issue is why we actually have a backflow prevention valve in our own home. We went ahead and did that just for that very reason. Okay, number one, I appreciate the need for the information. However, it is the developers coming forward with the development proposals that want to develop, and any new growth is supposed to be paid for by new development. I would suggest that the payment or the capital costs associated with putting in a new well will benefit everyone in the settlement area, as well as any new future development coming forward. I still believe that the water modeling study should be paid for, not out of the development charges reserve fund, because that should be put towards the costs to build the new well. And the fact that we are already paying for the building of the new well in our water rates, current water rates, that needs to be renamed somehow, because it's no longer appropriate. By all means, put it towards the pipes in the ground if you want for future use. However, if any new development comes forward, and this is the big if, and why subdivision applications, if I'm correct, they will be peer reviewed. Is that correct?
Yes, they will be peer reviewed, but we still don't have the baseline information required to ensure that the system's capacity, I understand that the volume of water is there, but we have no appreciation as to the infrastructure, the pipes in the ground and that sort of thing. At the end of the day, if council chooses not to do the water modeling, I guess we'll just run the risk of, okay, here's a development, not sure how the water pressure is going to be, but we've got water. Hope it's okay.
Would that not be up to the developers coming in when they do their water study to prove that it's okay with our water system? Is that not where the onus should be placed, the responsibility?
They're responsible for their component. They're not responsible for the overall operation of the system and how it fits into the system. Municipalities have, at least any municipality I have dealt with, has baseline information on how the system is functioning as a whole and how this development will then be incorporated into that system. And it's that baseline information that it's not a developer's responsibility to go through and do a water modeling study to see how their portion of the development will then fit into the entire municipality's water system. You're supposed to have a water modeling system that then we take their piece and put it in the big puzzle, as opposed to them doing the big puzzle and then putting in their piece too. And the development charges that have been collected previously are intended to cover these types of future expenditures.
And so a development that wants to be put in and has a location that is at a high point that would require good pressure to make sure water was adequate, that is the responsibility of the township to determine that ahead of time?
It's the responsibility of the municipality if we have designated lands, and it's our responsibility if we're going to approve subdivision lands that we know that they can be serviced appropriately. That is our responsibility as a municipality. We can't be recommending that lands be developed if we don't know that they can be properly serviced. And from what I understand, the whole pressure thing I just spoke to briefly, Larry will definitely correct me on this one. It has to, there's pressure release valves, and those pressure relief valves are intended to I guess moderate the water flow as it goes down through the system. And depending on where you are relative to the pressure relief valve, you may have excellent pressure or you may have poor pressure. I think that's my very, very kindergarten primer thing on pressure relief valves, but it's my understanding that if you're just after a pressure relief valve, you may have poor. I don't know. Larry or one of the others can correct me on that, because I'm a planner. I am definitely not an engineer, but I do know that from a planning perspective, we do need to have servicing capacity and servicing ability information available when making good planning decisions.
I just want to add that we're still at less than 25% of our capacity. So I know it's different. I understand it's different. And I'd like to use a real life situation just as an example. I'm sure all of you are aware of Crammy and the Big Apple, and they were proposing to, when the small bore sewer system was installed in 2003, the intention was that the Big Apple, they were the driving force behind that being installed in the first place. And the intention was that they would be hooking up to the system. In the end, they did not hook up to the system because getting water over to them required a pumping station, and that cost would have totally been borne by the Big Apple. So they did not hook up to the water system. I'm just saying that this is a tightrope we are walking, and we are a very small water system. And development in our township has to be very carefully done. And I'm just concerned that this step towards doing part of what should be paid for by future development is being paid for by the current users. That's it. That's my position. Thank you very much.
JR, go ahead.
Just unmute. Just a couple of comments, and I've been listening very closely to all of this. It sounds like we may need to have a water modeling plan, from what I'm hearing from Jennifer. But then my comment is, why, if it's 30 to 50K, why does that have to come out of the reserve fund? Can that money come from somewhere else? So I understand what Grid is saying. I understand that the reserve fund is for other stuff, and it sounds like it's a good plan to look at using it for the well. so that it doesn't come back on us current people for additional funding somehow. So I'm saying, my opinion is we shouldn't be using the reserve fund. Even though I hear that some of the new development may have fed into that reserve fund, I have a feeling that the reserve fund may be a large portion of current users and maybe some from new users, like the houses that recently built. But it shouldn't, that 30 to 50K, it sounds like there's a good reason why the reserve fund shouldn't be the point to pull it from. My comment is there another place in the budget of the township that water plan can be done other than the reserve fund?
I'm not sure who can answer that.
I can't answer, but because I'm not an expert, but my understanding of the whole system is that Grafton Communal Water is managed by the township, but they cannot swing money back and forth from the Grafton Water to the township and take those reserves that we've got of 400,000 and put a road in with them. And it also goes the same way. The township cannot borrow money or take, the water committee cannot take money from the general reserves and put it into the water system. That makes sense?
Go ahead, JR.
So I hear that, John, yeah. So another possible option, and I'm just trying to think through how we could get through this, is could we put in the water budget for the next year monies allocated for the plan, for the modeling plan? Not using, again, the reserve fund, but monies in the water budget to cover this plan, possibly. I'm just trying to think of other options where we don't use the reserve fund, but we still somehow come up with this plan that sounds like maybe the township should have for its future.
Go ahead, Grit.
So given that there's already one, and I gather two more coming through for these developers that want to bring forward their draft plans of subdivision, in the bylaw, it states that development charges can be asked for prior to, for subdivision developments. They're usually only recouped from individual residential builds at the time the occupancy permit is applied. So, but in the case of subdivisions, it is in the bylaw that they can request development charges in advance of the occupancy permits being issued. So given that these developers want to come forward, perhaps in good faith, should they be asked at this point to be providing some of the funding towards it? I think that was something that, if I recall a conversation with Jennifer Current a couple of years ago regarding the proposed developments that were coming forward, she did say that she talked with the developers about perhaps going together on the studies. And I gathered that each of the developers wanted to do it individually on their water studies. So maybe can they be approached again?
Go ahead, Jennifer.
Through you, Chair Booth. That discussion was with respect to their hydrogeology studies and their engineering studies on their specific properties. It was not dealing with connections to the municipal water system. So it was not, that wasn't the discussion that I had with them at all regarding their studies.
That's great. Thank you for the clarification.
At all.
That's important. Okay, that's good. Thank you.
John, you want to make a comment?
I just like to follow up a little bit with what Johnny R was saying. Each year, a portion of the charges that are charged to residents now, a portion of that money is calculated and put into reserves right off the bat. So if you're asking if we could take not take it out of reserves now, but take it out of future reserves, I guess you could probably do that, but you're going to end up with the same thing anyways.
I'll make a comment. JR, your comments were exactly what I was thinking. I guess we need to, as a committee, decide that, and I'm hoping everybody agrees, it looks like we do need the water modeling study. As Jennifer said, to be proactive in the town, we want to make sure that we have this. I guess my issue is who's paying for it, because it can't be the town paying for it, so it has to be the users. And I guess the comment would be, if you're taking it, if you make it a budget line next year and you take it out of there, well, then the users are paying for it. Like you said, John, it doesn't really matter. So I wanted a comment from Larry. Larry, you made the comment last meeting about not Grafton, about Coburg and how other people do it. Did Coburg pay for the water modeling study, and are they somehow getting money reimbursed from the new developers? Is that a way of doing it where we would pay for it, but all these new developers that are coming in are now, when they give us that little piece of the puzzle that hooks into our, I'm not sure how it works, but we talk about a piece of puzzle that we can then say, you're going to pay to help pay for that.
Okay, well, what we've done in Coburg is we initially paid for the water modeling. And then when the developer comes, and let's use Tribute, it's on the northeast corner of which we call Zone 3. So phase 1 is 250 homes. So they come to us and they says, we want to do 250 homes. So what we say is, okay, you lay out your sizing of your pipe that you think you should have in there, and then with the how many houses and the population and all those numbers, we work together. We send that to SEMA. SEMA then runs all those numbers through the water model, because they've gotten all the data from the water treatment plant, the SCADA systems. They have all that all the time, and then they'll come back and they'll say, okay, if you wanted to put a 6-inch pipe or a 150, and they're going to say, well, no, the volume for that is not suitable. A 200 or 8-inch pipe, you should upgrade to that. And what we do is they'll say that, and then we send them a bill, and they pay for that analysis through the water model.
So I guess my question.
So every phase that goes through the water model, and Tribute has like 6 phases coming up, everybody has to go through the water model. We will give them a price. They'll give us their drawings. We'll put it through the water model. We'll agree with it or make changes and suggestions. This is what it should be. And then we give them a report. And so they have that as their backup. And then they've paid for our expertise or SEMA's review of the water model.
So a question for you, Larry. Let's just use some numbers. If it costs $50,000 for the water modeling, and then Tribute Home comes to you with this request for 250, and it goes to SEMA, what SEMA comes to you and then says that's going to cost $5,000 to run that through. Is that just for the work that SEMA is doing there, or is some of that money to actually recoup to pay on the original 50,000 too?
That's the work that the SEMA says that they're doing for the water modeling.
So in other words, you still paid the 50,000. You're not getting any money back on the original 50. The developers are just paying.
We get a little bit, not much, just depending on the size of the thing. They just look at it and they say, this is what, looking at it and where it is and what zone it's in, they have a different price for every area.
Okay. So in other words, you're not really getting any payback off the 50,000 on the original price of doing the water modeling. It's just anything that's done afterwards, SEMA charges, and that makes sense. The developer would pay for that, but it's still the water users on the hook for the original 50,000.
Yeah, but then also if it comes back and let's say somebody outside the boundary wants to put a subdivision in, and we said, no, we can't supply water there. Right?
Yeah.
You don't want to be, the way I look at it is you want council should be in control of where the destiny of development should be going. And a good way to do it is if you have the footprint of Grafton and you know where you can build and all that, you build up in there, and that's where the water model comes in handy is say, yeah, you can do this. Let's say somebody just wants to go connect to one street and connect to another street and it's in two different zones. Then you're gonna say, well, you're in, because Grafton is in 4 zones. So the PVRs or the pressure relief valves, they are at the top. So the water coming down, let's say, is 80 psi, and then it drops down to 20 on the other side, and it goes down the hill. And it gets to the bottom, it's at 80. So you put another PVR down there, so because you don't want to over pressurize the systems or in the houses. So when you start to look at that, and if somebody is developing in an area where they're on Highway 2 and they're going all the way down beyond Station Road, there may be a zone pressure drop and all that. So they'll say, well, no, maybe I'll just run the pipes up one side. And we're going to say, well, we like to loop the system because loops are better than dead ends. So the water model sort of helps with this to say, this is the break point.
So I get everything you're saying, and what Jennifer says too makes sense
Yeah.
to me, that we do need the water modeling study. I think it's going to help the town. We need that for future development. I guess the argument would be is who's paying for it. So she's waving her hand. Go ahead, Grit.
Don't want to dominate, but
No.
this one really sits with me. I really believe that the money that's in the Development Charges Reserve Fund at the present time should be applied towards the new well. That is something I really firmly feel. And of course, maybe not everyone is in agreement with that, but this is a well that was contaminated well over a decade ago and hasn't been used. And we have had no backup well for over a decade. So the fact that we're putting in a new well, it's a backup. However, the second well is also, we may revert to the first well and have the second one as a backup down the road. Who knows? Bottom line is it's a capital cost, a direct capital cost to replace existing infrastructure. That's what development charges should be used for. If this council or this committee recommends to council to pay for the water modeling study, I personally still think it should be the developers, but that's okay. It's just my opinion. Then I would suggest that this should be deferred to the 2023 budget to be worked in there instead and potentially come out of the reserves, which have been amassing there and are over 500. I think they're around 539 or something now. It's down from what it was because we've spent some of the money, you know, the emergency repairs and the asphalt and whatever else. So to the header and stuff. So perhaps that's where the recommendation will come, that water modeling study comes out of it, but I don't think it's so urgent that it needs to be decided right now, and it wasn't budgeted for. So put it off to the 2023 budget and have a good discussion about it then. And if anything, take it out of the general reserves as opposed to the development charges reserve, which I think is more prudent use towards the new well. Because it is, the water modeling study is for future development. Thank you.
Comments? John?
I would make the recommendation that we go with what Grit is saying by first of all saying this committee recommends to council that we go ahead and do a water modeling study. That would be my first. I would second if you wanted to make that motion.
I'll make that motion, but not to take it out of development charts, to defer it to the 2023 budget and look at it coming out of the general reserves for water.
And I would also go along with what you're saying and have the treasurer make her take whatever it is into consideration and ask her the best recommendation she can make to council as to how that money should be, where that money should come from.
And at the same time, look at the development charges reserve fund and putting it towards the new well, since we've got the ISIC funding now. It was a well that we weren't expecting to have to replace yet, so.
You make a good point. Let's separate them though. That's a different thing that the committee could look at, of how much we can talk to the treasurer about that, of what we think is the appropriate amount to put towards that. I guess my question is two questions. Is Jennifer, it's not a rush, is it, to get the water modeling study done right away? But I guess the question goes to Larry first. Is Larry, how long does it take to do a water modeling study? Are we talking once the RFP goes out, or or if SEMA is the only one that can do it or whatever, is this something that takes a few months? Are we talking 6 months, a year?
No,
So we need to know that before we start to put our own dates on what we think is right.
well, I think that a water model doesn't take that long to do if you get the right data and like with the pressures leaving leaving the plant and all that there, and the pumping and all that there, it should be able to, I think Grant could probably answer this one more better than I could, as to how long a water model would take. If you could help me on
Yeah,
that.
yeah, probably for one like the Hamlet of Grafton, I'd say maybe like, yeah, 3 or 4 months, probably.
Yeah.
I would estimate. Yeah. Yeah, like they are starting from zero, from scratch, but it's not a huge system. So I'd say about 3 or 4 months.
And maybe a question for you then, Jennifer, are we looking, once we get the water modeling study done, are we looking at the same procedure sort of as Coburg, which is if Tribute Home came to us and they're going to add 50 houses in the hamlet of Grafton and they're going to hand you this information, we're giving that to SEMA so that they can plug it into the water model study. Are they paying for that information then?
Yes, they would be paying for the update to the water to the analysis of the data that they provide to the municipality. Take, for instance, right now we have Grafton Heights subdivision. Right now we have received engineering submission for final approval of that development. That's probably going to take place before we get this water modeling. So it's going to be what it's going to be. That development has a set of engineering drawings that we would give to SEMA, and they would take, it has the size of the pipes and everything in it and where the hydrants are going to be and all that kind of stuff. And they would, SEMA would feed that information into the model that the municipality has prepared, and say, our engineers, SEMA, would then say, yep, that's good, or no, as Larry said, no, your pipe needs to be X size or Y size in order for servicing. And there may be, I don't want to speak too much about this because I might say something wrong and sound really silly, but I'm going to say it anyways. I've worked in other municipalities where pressure has been an issue, and they've said that, no, you need to have a pumping station here because of topography and that sort of thing. So the water, I'm not sure that in Grafton that situation applies. I don't know, but that is something that can come up too.
Okay, and not to act like a stupid question, but Larry, you can answer this, or Jennifer can. Once the water model studying is done and a new developer comes on board and their piece of the puzzle is put through there and they pay that, obviously SEMA, this water modeling is sort of a living water model, right? That they add that onto the system. So if somebody else comes and wants to build 10 more houses, that's taken into account the developer before that already added 20, right?
Yes.
We're not going back and doing another.
No.
Like, how often would that water model study should last for years and years and years then, right?
Well,
As
the
long
one
as
here,
it's updated.
go ahead.
Yeah,
Greg.
well, that's what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
SEMA, if you're paying $5,000 to run your water model through them, they're obviously updating this document or the water modeling so that we're not in 10 years out of date and it has to be a whole new study done again. Maybe Grant can answer that. I don't know. We talk about water modeling, but I don't know what it really even is, but.
Yeah, no, you're right, Greg. Like if development actually gets approved and gets constructed, then you would just have that incremental update to the model. Like you'd add those few pipes onto the model for the new development. So yeah, so you're right. Like it's like a living model that gets incrementally updated as needed.
Okay. Grit, go ahead.
I just wanted to quickly say thank you to everyone for this very good discussion. And I will email my report to everyone when I go home. It won't be till later because we're going out. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
So Grit and John, you talked about if one of you wanted to make that motion that And we'll have to make sure that we make it so Pat and Yolanda can get it concisely. Go ahead, Grit. What was it that,
I make the motion that the Grafton Communal Water Committee agrees that a water modeling study needs to be undertaken. Further, that the water modeling study be deferred to the 2023 budget deliberations, which are coming up immediately, and look to take it out of the general reserves and not the development charges reserves. And also to look at the development charges reserve fund being used to
well, that's a
pay.
separate one.
Okay.
Let's just do the one and then we can talk about the other one.
Okay.
Are you okay? You'll second that, John?
I'll second that we are recommending that we go ahead and do the study.
Okay. Any discussion on that? We're okay with that. JR, you're all right with that? Mike had to go. He had a personal matter. So all in favor of that motion? Okay, so that will go back to the new council saying that we recommend it be done, and we will look at putting it in the 2023 budget and where it comes out of. And I'm not sure whether, so that closes that off with you, Jennifer. We're done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It was great information.
Now, I don't know whether it should be a resolution or whether it should be a motion to, it's what? It is, okay. I'd like to propose a motion to take the water modeling study costs out of the general water reserves as opposed to the, no, we've
We
already said that.
Yeah.
No, I'd like to propose that the development charges reserve fund that exists now be used for costs towards the new well construction.
So you want to do that motion, or would we like to, at the next water meeting, bring that up with Nicole and discuss it with her? Or you want to just go ahead and make that motion that, because I guess the discussion would be how much of that 340,000 is it you said, or whatever?
Well, it could be discussed as to how the percentage. Maybe they want to say 70% of it, or 50% or 70 or 80, whatever.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I'm just wondering how much, instead of saying it's the whole ball of wax, Nicole might come to us and
Okay,
say,
so look at the development charges reserve motion to use a portion of the development charges reserve fund to be determined.
or could we,
Discuss it.
would you be open to making a motion to have Nicole look at it and come back to us at the next meeting with a proposal of, we're looking at using some or all or part of that money
And the
towards
sure, whatever, that works.
Isn't that part of the first motion or not?
No,
it
the
isn't.
first motion I made her keep it separate is
Yeah.
we're just dealing with the water modeling and that we're putting it to the 2023 budget. This now is what Grit's saying is the money that we have in that fund should be going to pay towards the well. My question is how much?
Right, and I understand John's concerns about the pipes in the ground and all the rest of it, and only being PVC, but that's what water pipes are. The reserves that we put away every year through our rates that we pay also builds up our general water reserves, and that can also be used towards all of that, which is what it's supposed to be too, right? But I agree, there's infrastructure that needs to be looked after, so.
So
Carry
would
on.
you be open then for a motion to say Nicole could look at that and come back to with options? So she might say,
Motion to
let's-
direct staff to explore the options of
What
using the development,
percentage?
yes,
to use the development fees
Yes.
towards the well.
yes.
Does that make sense to you, Yolanda? The seconder?
I'm still a little bit confused. When we go back to the first portion, where are we getting the money to pay for the study?
I said to bring it forward to the budget and to recommend that it come out of the general water reserves.
Okay.
So that one now is next year budget and then where it's coming out of.
Where it's coming, not recommending where it's coming out of, or we're gonna ask staff.
No,
No.
she made the direct and you seconded it, that it's coming out of a specific fund. So
Yeah,
it's
out of
not,
the general water reserves fund,
Right.
or
rather
reserves.
than development.
right.
Right, And then,
Now what Grit's talking about is the fund that we have with the 340,000 or $350,000. How much of that are we going to put towards the new well? Whether we're putting it all, whether we're putting it half, it's almost like making a down payment on your car. How much are you going to put? And I would like to hear from Nicole to say, because she might come to us and say, hey, listen, I recommend you not use the whole thing, that you put this much amount of money or whatever it is. So let staff come back to us with that, and she might give us maybe 2 or 3 options, and then we can make a recommendation to council.
I kind of thought that's what we were doing for the first one.
no, it wasn't. And then,
No.
and a little addition to that, if possible, just that the current water rate study that is in place and the water rate charts that we're following be reviewed, because we're not even 2 years into our water rates at this point in time. In fact, we're only a year and a half in. It'll be another 3.5 years before any review takes place. Is there a chance to internally review that water rate structure, even if it's to stay in place, because we know that we are in an infrastructure deficit. So I'm not against collecting the money, but I'm against collecting money that's going towards the purchase of the construction of the new well. Can we find a way to rename that so that that money is actually being allocated for the other repairs and things that need to be done in the system?
And hopefully Nicole will look at that, right? To say, because it could end up like you're saying, Grit, it could be saying, let's just leave the rates that they are.
Yeah.
And I agree with what you're saying, that maybe it gets renamed or something, because really it's not. If we put some of that money as a down payment on there, then it could affect the water rates the way that he said. But if you're okay with Nicole coming back to us with what we should be, then
yes.
Can I get a seconder for that? If it made sense. Basically, it's to let Nicole look at the money that we have in reserves and how much of that we should be putting towards the well.
In the development charges.
Right, in the development charges. I get a seconder, John, JR.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So I don't know if everyone knows my background, but it is in large multi-million-dollar project management. And when I hear this discussion on the money, I agree with Grit that we should be looking at this reserve fund to use it towards the well, but I think it's only one piece of the picture, and I don't know the rest of the picture. And I was going to get to it if we're going to go through where we are with the new well project with Grant here, but we're starting to run into a lot of time on this meeting. But anyway, where I'm going is I don't see anything wrong with what Grit is asking for, to say that's, we should be pulling some money out of there towards the well, but what is the total budget for the new well? And I'm hearing numbers, tossed around that, with 1.7 something, and we got 1.2 in a grant, and there's a difference. But I mean, that to me is not a budget. That's not a project budget. That's just numbers being tossed around, and they're good numbers, Grit, by the way. That good to see them. But I if I was going to motion or second anything, I'd want to see the whole picture. What is the project budget for the new well in total? How much are we spending on this RFP? How much has been spent already? What are the other pieces to be done? And what is the budget for each of those pieces? I'm not even talking about a project schedule or a plan per se as to what we're going to do when. It's just, what is our budget to do all the pieces? And I'm not sure if Grant's going to be able to talk to what all the pieces are. And has anyone put together a project plan, schedule, budget for all those pieces? But this discussion on using the reserve fund is only one piece of that total picture.
And it's going to be more than the
Grant.
That's my concern.
Grant, can you make a comment on, John makes some good points about, do we know, are some of these numbers that have been presented to us, are they fairly accurate? And obviously things change, but.
Sure. Yeah, like we did like sort of a very rough kind of high level look at the budget to drill and test a new well, do the hydro-G study, get the permit, and then connect it into the plant, run a line into the plant, and do some modifications into the piping and valving at the plant to receive the new water. And yeah, our budget estimate there was about 1.7 million. Was fairly round number. And then what we've included when we prepared this RFP, most of it is related to like the design and approvals, but we did include in there, like as the engineer develops like detailed drawings and specifications, would be to firm up that number at stages as they go to like pin that number down closer. But right now, yeah, I would say like the 1.7 million, sort of an all-inclusive number, is probably reasonable for the project. And that includes when we issue the RFP, there'll be a cost for the engineering services. So that's included in the 1.7, and then the drilling of the well and the construction of the new pipes and valves to bring it in, that's included in there as well. And like the power supply, you have to bring a power supply to where the well site is going to be, which would kind of be likely in the bush there. So it's like an all-inclusive price for design and construction.
So I get what you're saying, John, is if Nicole just comes back to us with a general report, obviously, you know, the RFP has to go out. We have to pin these numbers down, like Grant's saying, and we have a more direct, we know what it is. I think it would be just general discussion with Nicole right now, depending on what the final amount that the Grafton water users are going to be on the hook for, would then depend on how much of that money we want to take out. But I think it starts a discussion. If I'm thinking that's what you want, Grit, is that we can't pin down a number of how much of that money we're going to until we know exactly what we're on the hook for, right?
No, you're correct. And in fact, in the 2021 water rate study, I believe that the well came in, or it's been calculated at 1.8 million. So we actually have a buffer in there already that we're paying for.
So I would think the motion, John, is just at least Nicole's thinking about it, is that the committee is looking at, we want to use some of that money, how much we don't know, but sort of what are our options? Nicole, like I said, might come back to us and say, hey, listen, you want to make sure that you're leaving, I don't know, $100,000 in that fund for whatever, or she might say you could use it all because we're, you know, so.
Taking the money out of the development charge won't come out until the end of the year and any given year anyway. So
yeah,
it's just having the process in place.
Yeah, it starts the discussion to get going on it, to look at it, that. So that makes sense, sort of. Yolanda, you and Pat are great at that, to get the essence of the. Okay, can I have a seconder for that? Seconder, JR. Okay, all in favor? Oh, okay, go ahead.
All I'm saying is, I don't have any problem with any of this, but all I'm saying is we should be going to the treasurer and getting our staff to make recommendations.
That's what this says, John. So basically, it's just going to Nicole and saying, Nicole, we don't know what the final number is that we're on the hook for, but can you give us some options of how much of that money, if any, we should be spending? And like Grit said, to be realistically, it's going to be way, way down the road.
Yeah. All I'm saying is let's use our staff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Nicole can do it. We're not, no consultants, Troy. Other than SEMA. And I guess, well, we voted on that. All in favor? Yeah, passed. I guess, Larry, getting back to that, so is SEMA I guess that doesn't go out into an RFP for a water modeling? Are they like the only player in town for that?
No,
Or
they're not the only ones. There's a GHD can do it, and I'm sure Grant's group can do a water model, you know, like you want to put an RFP, you know, that way you're being fair across the board and being transparent.
okay.
You know, just that
No,
we,
that's good. We want to make sure we're following the town rules and regulations
Yeah.
and that. I was just wondering whether they were the only player in town or not. So,
so our water model started with GHD, and then when we went to the water master plan, that when we put that out as an RFP, that whoever at the end of the day, ended up doing the water master plan, would also end up doing the water modeling. So that we tied the two together, so we didn't have different groups. One doing the model, one looking after the water master plan. It was all one thing. So that's how we ended up with SEMA, because there was RV Anderson and there was GHD and all them. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that ends that. Before we adjourn, this is the last meeting of the Grafton Water Committee with the council members and members of the public and that are on this committee. The new council gets sworn in next week. The town has put out on their website asking for volunteers, and one of them is for the Grafton Water Committee. I'm hoping that JR and Grit are seriously thinking of coming back. Your input is valued very much. And I'll probably be sitting on this committee next time too, if the mayor deems it's okay. But I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank JR, to thank Grit, to thank John for all the effort that you've put in. It's been much appreciated. And also to Bruce and Larry and Troy, Grant and Pat and Yolanda too. She's beside me here. Thank you very much for everybody for putting me up. And it was a great discussion, Grit. You're right. It was a very detailed discussion. We all had our input and it was handled nice. So I'm very appreciative of that. Okay, so let's first of all, before we adjourn, when's our next meeting? We have one in December, right, Yolanda, I think?
I'm not sure if that date is going forward. I guess it really does depend on when we get committee members together. So dates will be posted in the near future, very soon, I'm assuming.
Okay, and hopefully we can even get some more people to be on. John, go ahead.
Yeah, I just, if Bruce, you're coming to do some testing in December.
That's correct.
So I guess if you're coming to town and we can arrange it, would be probably a good idea to have that at the same time.
That's what I usually try to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they were talking about the little tour, Bruce.
Oh, that's true too. Okay, yeah.
Well, Grit mentioned, remember at the last meeting
yeah.
about a little tour, if he was here, that we could actually see what he does. If that's possible, Bruce, you can go through Yolanda and Pat with that.
So if I had if we had the next date, then I guess we could establish that as being the date of the tour too.
And I'm also thinking it would be a great time then to have the water committee come up to the water plant and then show what's going on there and what we've done in the last year or so with staff have done with inside the building and out there.
I guess before we jump too far ahead, we better make sure that we have the new committee here, because if we have one or two new people on it too, I don't want to have a date and then we get 3 new people and then it's like we got to do the tour all over again. So why don't we, I'm sure Troy and them will work on it. Hopefully, like I said, JR, yourself and Grit, who will be members of the public, put your name in. If we get a few more people put in, Pat or Yolanda can tell me, when is the closing date? Is it the 25th of November for the volunteers?
Yes, it is.
And then that would have to go to council, right? So we're probably not looking until the first week of December until, am I correct in thinking
Yes.
that? Okay. So it's probably too late for your tour, Bruce, or that, but I think that's a great thing. What Grit mentioned is maybe in the new year with the new committee, we could do a tour, and then with Larry too, and that Lucy supplies a very nice lunch and little funeral sandwiches and that they're great. Okay, if there's nothing else to bring up, thank you very much, everybody. And can I get a motion to adjourn? Grit Cole, seconder, John Logal, all in favor. Thank you very much, everybody. It's a late meeting. It's almost 5 o'clock, right? And
I'm sorry.
4:49 we end. Thank you very much, everybody. See you next time.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Have a good weekend. Enjoy the good weather.